Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Robert Bechtel from DOE, James Doyle from Unisys, Anil Carmel from NNSA, Rick Lauderdale from DOE, Tom Simmons from Citrix, and the illustrious Christy Dorbeck. The insider stage, and we will get moving with the CXO forum.
Awesome.
So, Chris,
we're ready to go. Look it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Did the flowers actually coordinate before, by the way? They coordinated the outfits. Wasn't that awesome? Did you? No one else noticed? I'm alone here. Fine. Just leave me hanging. I'm fine. We're talking, look at this, enterprise transformation challenges of the CXO. Sounds very important. Well, look at all these people that are going to explain what the challenges are. You just heard from them. I am going to start with Rob Bechtel. He is the Chief Technology Officer and Senior Policy Advisor for the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy within the Energy Department. So Rob, CXOs, what's the big challenge? What's top of your to-do list? Yeah, sorry.
The microphone.
Mic.
So for me, the big challenge are, on a very, very humorous level, is to wipe the phrase "big data" off the planet and change it to big information or big understanding. But
good luck with that, by the way.
I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
It's a great marketing spin for a lot of firms because they can get a lot of money off of it. But at the end of the day, the real challenge it really is that understanding. So we have lots of information flowing through the enterprise. And the disaggregated enterprises that we all manage, run, develop, that information flows independently, both into the enterprise, through the enterprise, and out. And at any point of entry, you have little understanding or rationalization of the information that's around you. So situational awareness, understanding the information, that's the big challenge for me. IT solutions are abundant. Integrators are by the bazillions. And I can bring solutions to my enterprise fast, whether or not it brings understanding for the customer base, whoever that customer is, internal, across government, external to government. That's ultimately the big challenge. How do I give them understanding of what it is they're seeing? If someone enters my enterprise from a position of I'm looking to see what intellectual property has been developed and where it's been utilized across the enterprise, to what was spent on it, who did it, nobody can do that today. You have to. It's a major, major fire drill to find all those elements on any particular piece of information. And in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, with our goal of increasing development and deployment of these technologies into the market and facilitating them, our ability to understand the information in our enterprise is crucial internally. Portfolio rationalization, something Rick knows a lot about. Leveraging infrastructure on demand from Anil. So as we work together and we align our initiatives at any different level of what we in EERE we lovingly call the parfait. And so there's a top level of software as a service, there's a middle level of platform as a service, and the foundational level, which is that infrastructure or network as a service. And so having that infrastructure in demand, building all of that, having understanding through all of it, that's my challenge. I need to know where that information is and what matters across the enterprise.
Sorry, I had to switch sides because apparently they don't want to look at my derriere. Can't imagine why. So how are you making all that happen? Everyone's talking about big data, and what are you actually doing to try and make sense of all this data that exists?
So in EERE, we definitely made a decision to go with cloud service provider and leveraging what Anil and NNSA and OCIO DOE are building on the infrastructure level. On top of that, we're going to implement SharePoint and Salesforce alongside each other. So it's collaboration, there's understanding, there's rapid application development, contextualization across the enterprise. The biggest challenge there for us isn't so much the development. There is that part, and it is a challenge, being accurate in how we build it, building in an agile development environment, which government, certainly at a leadership level, is absolutely not ready for. Leadership doesn't understand the sausage making. So agile works for those of us who know it. But building waterfall is what leadership understands. So you build an agile and you wrap it in a waterfall blanket. And then the real challenge is the data quality. So I have lots of information, but it's a lot of garbage meat. And if it goes into that sausage maker, I get garbage. So how do we solve that problem? And as we go to solve it with us, in EERE, we're using Salesforce. We have teams building requirements, re-engineering business processes, lots of integration development work going on, deployment due in the fall, all this. But alongside of that is that core challenge of how do you migrate data that is of questionable quality into a new system designed to work with high quality data? And how do you do that when you're a green screen coder, an integrator? You're not the guy that knows whether or not a particular solution set or a data set is good. Is that good information? Nobody knows. from the IT side. That's not our job. Our job is to give you a catcher's mitt to catch it. We need subject matter experts in the programs, in the enterprise to engage with us, and that's exactly what we're doing. It is that ability to leverage real rigorous agile development and user-centered design in government on an enterprise scale level at the first time, certainly within DOE, at this level of engagement. Constant engagement. There are user checkpoints and UATs with every development sprint. The audience is engaged at all levels, and we report up to the senior management within the organization regularly on what we're doing.
Right here next to me is Anil Carmel. He is Deputy Chief Technology Officer for the National Nuclear Security Administration. Anil, what's big on your to-do list?
Well, actually, let me start first off by saying thank you, Chris, for bringing a bit of summer to the Hamilton Live. Appreciate.
I can only wear this like 3 days a year, so.
Well, we appreciate you sharing it with us
Yeah.
here. Loving the seersucker. So with that, you know,
Emphasis on the sucker?
no,
It's fine.
just making it a little light here. See,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
so with that, you know, in terms of you know, challenges that we face, you know, challenges really are one of the fundamental reasons that RightPath was born, right? In the sense that, you know, in our partnership between NNSA and DOE, as we look at enterprise transformation and the challenges that we face, those challenges are not solely technology-based. There are challenges around our culture, people, challenges around the processes in which we consume and deliver IT services, and leveraging the right technologies to deliver innovation to our consumer base. So that's what, when we think about challenges, we have to think about challenges holistically from a people, from a process, from a technology perspective, leveraging the best of industry and government to transform our enterprise. So really, it's not something that can be done on either on one side or the other. And you'll hear a lot more about what we've actually done in those barriers to delivery and what we've done to that end from my friend and partner in delivery, NSA CTO and RightPath Program Manager, Travis Howerton. So along those lines, you have to have the right architecture to enable that delivery. So by partnering with Rick and our friends around the DOE and industry, we pull the right architectural components together to enable that delivery. So really, when we talk about challenges, we have to think about challenges holistically. What are the barriers? What problems are we actually trying to solve? And what architecture are we putting in place to get there?
So I know you spend a lot of time focused on cloud and building cloud infrastructure. Why does cloud matter in terms of this transformation?
So, you know, cloud is a word that we've used quite a bit, right? But at the end of the day, we have to understand what is cloud and what does that mean to us, right? And it means something different to each and every one of us, right? Which is why when you think about cloud, to some people that means private cloud. To some people that means public cloud. Or it's hybrid cloud. To DOE, as you saw in the opening keynote, bullet number 1, to DOE, it means a cloud of clouds, a secure hybrid community cloud, something that we call your cloud. Putting the power of IT in our consumers' hands, allowing them to make an educated decision through a broker, infrastructure on demand, as to where they should house those workloads. A risk-graded decision, wrapping security around the workload and giving you visibility around where your workloads reside, whether on-premise or in a commercial cloud service provider, through a unified control plane, and baking security in as opposed to bolting it on. So really, when we talk about cloud, you have to talk about cloud holistically, talk about what it means to you, and what problem are you trying to solve and how are you going to get there.
And so this enables the users out there to be more agile. The end goal is what?
So the end goal, at the end of the day, when we talk about challenges, when we talk about, you know, what problems are we trying to solve, we as IT practitioners, it comes down to 2 words. We have to simplify complexity. That's fundamentally what we have to do. When we have these complex IT systems that we have developed in partnership with industry, right? But as we transform the delivery of those systems to our consumers and make it easy for our consumers to consume those services, yet provide the right visibility to our consumers, to our IT practitioners as to where all those workloads reside and how we secure those workloads, it comes down to simplifying the complexity that we've built. That really fundamentally is the key. especially in the context of BYOD, as we talk about mobility and that intersection of cloud and mobility. Simplifying the complexity that we've built so that we can deliver solutions in an agile manner, that's the win.
Okay, let me bring in Rick Lauderdale. He is Chief Architect at the Energy Department. Rick, I remember the days when people said, oh, architecture, that doesn't really matter. Everybody says architecture is really important these days. Why? Why does architecture matter?
Well,
can I go back over on the other side, by the way?
Sure.
Yes, no? Oh, thank you. I was going to do it anyway, so.
Well, I think architecture is important. We do it everyday lives, whether we call it architecture or not. I personally call it business transformation, not architecture, mainly because people understand business transformation. I know industry does a great job. Certain companies like Boeing, AT&T, and USAA and Kaiser Permanente do a great job. Architecture has a hard time, as GAO has come out, on outputs and benefits. What are the outputs and benefits of architecture? And so what that relates to is metrics, really metrics and your leadership's vision of what they want. So you may be providing some architecture, maybe the wrong architecture, because you're not in alignment with your leadership. So the strategy they sit down, we help provide options, and we provide risk mitigation and so forth, and they go forward. But it's a constant evolution of cycles beginning, and I begin very simply, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What are your alternatives? What are your risks? Do you have the people? Do you have the dollars? Do you have the patience? Because it's going to take a period of time to accomplish this, and to provide valid metrics back to the senior leadership.
So far this morning we've talked about security, we've talked about mobility, we've talked about cloud, we've talked about big data. How does architecture fit into those kinds of issues?
It's in all of them at the very beginning, because we have placards throughout the energy this month, and it says three things: strategy, business, technology, and those three things in that order. It's not technology, strategy, business. It's strategy, business, technology. And we say we're mapping business needs to technology. There have been failures in EA within government and industry, and you can read about them in the paper. And I always look at them from an architecture standpoint. Why did it fail? Why were the tracks laid and they didn't?
You look at them and you laugh at those people.
What's
don't
that?
You laugh at those people.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you relish in their failure.
Well,
It's okay.
I'll tell you, no, I don't, because when I was in the Navy, I always used to say, we always have time to do it over again, but we never have time to do it right. So it takes a lot of planning, 80% planning up front and about 20% implementation. So if you do the planning up front, then hopefully, and you've looked at all the what ifs, all the risks that could possibly go wrong, worst case scenarios, like we learned in the military, then hopefully you've done your homework, and then you go forward at minimal cost to the taxpayer and to support like energy.
But it's all the stuff up front that we just don't want to really do. Wayne was talking about setting requirements.
It's hard.
All the architectures, all that stuff. We want to get through that stuff so we can actually start, quote unquote, doing things. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that folks care about architecture?
Well, here's when I give speeches, I tell people I relate it to buying a car. I said, okay, you're going to buy a car. Do you go out and buy the first car you see? You know, do you do that? Or do you buy the most expensive car you would love to have? Or do you go through a requirements analysis? You say, okay, I'm single, I can afford this car, or I can do that car. Oh, I'm going to get married in the next 6 months. I may have children. My requirements are going to change. I can only afford so much. I want it to last so long. You do the alternative analysis versus lease versus buy, and then you make a decision based on your requirements. Hopefully, it's the right decision. But we go through that in every single day of our lives, either buying a home or buying clothes or a car. But if you do major investments, you have to go through a requirements analysis and hopefully make the decision. Hopefully, people don't buy a van and they're 21 years old and they're riding around, trying to like a Hyundai Odyssey, and they would rather have a sports car. So it's based on individual needs and requirements, and you go forward. It's the same thing that we do in everyday life, whether it's in the commercial.
So government's buying a lot of vans?
Well, no, not necessarily.
I'm just making sure I understand the analogy.
They're more visible. They're more visible, and you can't afford. We owe due diligence to the taxpayers. You cannot afford to waste taxpayers' money. You have to make a solid decision based on the requirements of either your agency, your leadership, and also the taxpayer. So.
Let me bring in our industry folks. James Doyle is Vice President and General Manager for Global Managed Services at Unisys. That sounds very important, James. CXOs, the challenges, how do you guys help the government do its job better?
I'm curious, do you have a set of braces under that jacket?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I can show you later.
I actually come from the commercial side of the Unisys house, and what we're trying to do is actually take the best practices that we're doing in the commercial world and apply them to the federal government. One of the things that is clear is that if you look at the last 2 years, we talked about disruptive trends. And as technology people, we come up with a byword for that called SMAC, which is social, mobile, analytics, and cloud computing. Customer experience is the most fundamental aspect of that, because essentially if you look at the end user services experience that occurred, let's say 20 years ago, it was foundationally about technology. It was a help desk. What we've come to is a point in time where we have to get to a productivity desk. And the gentleman in the last panel was talking about training. Well, if you look at what's going on in the world with bring your own device and bringing activities into the world such as cloud computing as well as social, it becomes a different set of objectives that people are looking for out of a service desk or end user services support. The one thing that we're doing, and we're doing this with major corporations around the globe, whether it be Unilever, GE, and things of that nature, is if you look at the way end user experience was defined, everybody remembers the platinum, gold, silver type of mentality. Well, all that was a cost model, nothing more. What we're doing today is looking at it from the standpoint of who's the user, what functions do they perform within an organization, what essentially is their appetite for technology, which becomes a demographic concern, what applications do they actually use, which also changes the image of the devices that they're going to be using going forward, and their access point, whether it be in a hybrid enterprise, whether it be cloud or on-premise. What that does is create a persona. So what we're doing with organizations from an end user standpoint is creating a persona of that end user full stack. Who they are, functionally what they do, applications they touch, image that's required, and what their appetite and their intellect is for technology. So what that does is it creates an experience that's almost customized beyond the realm of platinum, gold, and silver that has been in the industry for 20 years and gets them to a better customer experience as they actually do productivity and their workload on a daily basis.
And, well, let me bring Tom in. Tom Simmons is the Area Vice President, Public Sector for Citrix. Tom, talk a little bit about one of the things that has dramatically changed over the last 10 years is, guess what, it's a much more consumer-focused. These folks used to be able to essentially dictate to industry what they wanted. They can't do that anymore. That creates a very different dynamic, doesn't it?
It does. I think, representing a technology OEM and software publisher, technology is just that. It's an enabler. The hierarchy that we talked about here earlier, it's strategy, business, technology. We can do a lot of things with technology, but it has to fit in, as Anil said, the culture of an organization. The title of the discussion here is the challenges of the CXO. We see C-level folks pulled in a lot of different directions today. You've got a workforce and user community in technology that comes with a set of expectations based on what they do in their personal life. I got a cool new tablet device for Christmas, and I can do all these things sitting at home in front of the TV. I want to do some of those things in the office. Make that happen for me. The other side of that equation is whether it's the private sector with Sarbanes-Oxley, whether it's the public sector with mandates that come down from law or policy. I've got to make sure that in using that, I'm not sacrificing or putting data at risk, especially the kind of data that these folks work with. So the challenge of the CXO is to, provide the kind of tools and capabilities to a consumer community so that they can do their job, live up to the mandates that sit atop of that, and play that balance. You mentioned earlier in the earlier panel discussion, say no to mobility. There's nobody that's going to be able to say no to mobility. Work is rapidly evolving from a place you go to what you do. I think Craig made reference to, a generation of programmers that want to sit at the beach in their cutoffs and program. That's not too far away, even for rocket scientists. So the idea here is, how do I provide that flexibility, that access, while balancing the security requirements that are very, very real when you talk about some of the kinds of data that folks have to work with to do their job.
What does this consumerization of IT mean on the government side? Because you guys were able to kind of dictate things. That's not true anymore. Anil has...
Yeah, I'll start by saying, really, as we transform and change the paradigm in which we deliver IT services, moving from an IT provider, a sole IT provider, to an IT broker, right? We have to look at what is the right balance for our consumers from as Tom mentioned, a security and functionality perspective, right? So, and you have to have security baked in to the design, right? So from that standpoint, from a consumerization of IT, you have to make it simple, as James mentioned, for the consumer to use. The UX is key. If you get the UX wrong, you're going to fail before you start it. So you got to get the user experience right, and you have to make it easy to consume those services, right? And you have to make it easy to deliver those services, right? So that's going to take some changes from an acquisition strategy, from a cultural perspective in terms of how we consume and deliver services, through the right vehicle. And in our viewpoint, that's through a technical broker, right? Infrastructure on demand in this context, where you deliver servers and services through a broker. From that standpoint, when you talk about the security components that wrap around that, look at NIST SP 500-299, the NIST Cloud Security Reference Model.
I love that one.
Right? See, that's a page turner, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
It was so much better than 298.
I'm telling you. So when you look at the cloud security reference model, that reference model looks at cloud through 5 lenses. Cloud carrier, cloud consumer, who's consuming the service. Now the carrier is the transport. The cloud provider, who's providing the service. The cloud auditor, who's auditing the service. And the cloud broker, both a technical broker and a business broker, right? So when you look at the 5 actors in the cloud security reference model in that NIST publication, in this context, in terms of UX and how you consume and deliver the service, in our viewpoint, that's through this technical broker that is in the model that is, from a security perspective, crosses the consumer and the provider plane, delivering services in a new way. So that really, from that standpoint, getting the UX right, again, from the beginning.
But it seems like, this company that makes these devices basically has said to government, yeah, we don't care about your security requirements, go blow them out your ear. Those are my words, not theirs. Steve Jobs, I'm sure, would use much better language. But how do you, that's a very different, and you have employees who are saying, okay, I want to be able to use this device to do all my stuff. That seems like a big canyon to cross.
Right. So we'll break that problem down to its fundamental tenets in that intersection of cloud and mobility. And it really piggybacks off of what James said, in the sense that when you talk about that intersection of cloud and mobility, think about it in 4 lenses. Who's the user? What data are they trying to access? Where are they trying to access that data? And how? What's the management and visibility components in that context? So in a who perspective, right, you have to have the right vehicle to authenticate that user to the information in which they're trying to access. So you have to have an authentication vehicle. In our mind, in our model, that's OneID. That is a federated identity management model. You heard in the opening keynote that we are a government-owned contractor-operated organization. So instead of pulling in and building one Active Directory, we say, you have your own authentication vehicle. We take your authentication vehicle, flip it to a SAML assertion, and use SAML to authenticate you to your enterprise application, right? distributed authentication, centralized authorization to enterprise applications, right? So that's the who component. In the what data are you trying to access? That comes down to the appropriate virtualization and containerization solutions as to whether that data needs to be resident on the device or in your data center, right? And then the mobility component that comes back to we'll get to the how. The where speaks to that. Is it in your cloud? Is it that hybrid point? Is it on-premise? And then the how point comes back to the device that's in your pocket, right? Where you authenticate to that device, and whether it's the appropriate virtualization or containerization solution, that data is either on the device or back in the data center, bringing that whole paradigm together.
So Rob, the former CIO over at VA, Roger Baker, always talks about, he had a lot of doctors out in VA hospitals who were using essentially a Google Calendar, because guess what, they could share it easily, and they were trying to do their jobs better, and VA wasn't providing them with a technical solution. Now, he still had to say, you can't do that, and he gave them reasons why. And I have to imagine that's not a unique situation in government, where folks are trying to do their jobs, and guess what? If you don't provide the tool, they find a way around you.
And that's precisely right. You know, they're gonna find the path to success that works for them, and it gets to that idea of, well, at the end of the day, we're going to talk to the customer, and it's sort of the cart horse argument. What goes first? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the horse. I'm going to find out what kind of cart he wants to pull and what he would like in that cart before I even attach it to him. Before I begin to build, I need to know what I'm thinking about. But in the way that we're trying to develop
Rick says
solutions,
we need to buy vans. I'm just saying.
I gave up an Audi for a van when I had another child. It's like, so still got that. But the trick is, you know, back to Anil's, it's that who and the what. It's that ability to say, okay, this is what you want. This is what we know you need. Where's the intersection between those? And how do we get you there in an effective means by which you can do your job efficiently, but that I can share that service across other elements of my enterprise, so that I don't build a single solution just for you to make you happy. I need to make a solution that serves the needs of multiple customers. And it's that idea of, you know, anything we do in ERE, we're guided by a whole bunch of different documents. At the end of the day, executive boards, et cetera. So there's commodity IT and cloud first, clearly important to what we're doing. But then there's a shared services model, there's open data, and there's digital government of services model. So all of those drive how we move down this path. And it's that idea, you know, on one side, you want to create a UX that serves the customer's needs so they want to be in that environment. I want to do my job. I like this environment. This is not something I have to relearn every time I touch this application. It's important for me. And I understand what it is that my role is within this environment that I'm authorized to access. But beyond that, it's also the ability for me to say, on an open side, in an effort to sort of increase transparency or visibility and reduce redundancy of applications across the enterprise. One of my goals is to disaggregate sort of the aesthetic from the information. I want to release my information. I want to give it to those people who can do more with it than I can. So it is incumbent upon government to say, hey, who needs this information? And it would say, you can grab it a bunch of ways. You can either grab it in raw data format, you can grab it in API format. And oh, by the way, I have an API for the raw data and I have an API for the semantic architecture. You can take it all. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand this. How do we do that? How do I become that enabler, leveraging technology as an enabler to make it possible for the consumer of information, whether it's Harriet homeowner or it's a congressperson or it's someone in government, an executive, and it's Rick Lauderdale, and he wants to answer the question of what's Bechtel building today, which could change tomorrow. But he needs to know that, and I need to provide him a means by which to do that. So he needs to be able to look at what I'm doing and be able to understand the entirety of my enterprise in a minimal clicks. And that's one of our challenges. That's where we have to go.
And I think part of the challenge also is that folks they think coming up with the proper way it looks and make it easy is your responsibility. They don't really want to have to think about it, and they don't want to have to take the time to tell you what they need and want.
No, I mean, that dog don't hunt. So they have to be part of our enterprise. They have to be fully invested in what we're doing. They are the customers, but they're also the developers. When we build a product, we engage with our customer base. We go out and we say, what do you want? What don't you have? We think we know what your process is. Let's refine it. Let's define it. Let's put in place a new process to do your job so you can be better, faster, cheaper, smarter, pick your Gartner phrase, whatever it is. At the end of the day, we want to make it possible for them to do their job, be happy in their work, to complete the business of government as efficiently as possible. So when you drive home at the end of the night and you call your retired parents down in Naples, Florida, and say, I didn't waste your money today, that's the job. And you need to be able to do that. And it's engaging with that customer base, whether it's internal, talking to Congress. What do you want? Do you want to pull out your Droid device in the middle of a session and say, this is what DOE has done for me today? Yes, you do. We can't do that. It's fundamentally simple from a technological standpoint. I could make a GIS layer, a KML in Google and whip that sucker out tomorrow if I had the processes and the data flowing into the location. I could do that. Can't. So how do you solve that? You engage with the audience, you engage with the customers, and you ask the customers, what do you want? And how do I build this?
If it's Naples, Florida, they're pretty much in a left turn lane with their right turn blinker on. So,
Tis the season, yeah.
James, does that all make sense? Is that how you get it? Are you seeing that in the commercial side that you're getting folks? That's how you get the frontline folks involved in the process.
It's absolutely critical. And I'll go back to Robert's comment. They are the designers, ultimately. If you look at, we talk about social, we talk about mobile, we talk about cloud, but none of it happens unless you deal with the application layer. The application layer is key to this. So as designers, you may have to lead them to water, so to speak, but at the end of the day, they just, the customer, the end customer, whether it be a commercial customer or a government customer, has to be engaged in terms of what they're looking for is content. They're not looking for transactions per se. They're looking for content. So for them to design the content, the vehicles are there from a technology standpoint to actually deliver the content. But at the end of the day, if they don't design it with us, then it's all for naught. Because you could talk mobile, social, all day long. You cannot enable it unless you have the applications that drive the content.
Tom, my good friend Brent Bushy, who has actually done Agile and made it actually work, which, well, he's won awards for it, for goodness sakes. And when I was talking to him for my show, he said one of the problems was convincing everyone that yes, we have to spend the time up front to do all the stuff that you're talking about. And people said, hold on, I have all this other stuff that I have. Am I getting this essentially correct? You can say no. Everyone's saying, I'm so busy, I don't have time to do this. It's kind of like what we were talking about enterprise architecture. How do you convince them that all this upfront work matters and that it's not going to work on the back end if you don't do the front end?
Well, I think at the end of the day, one of the early comments was it's 80% planning and 20% implementation. If the goals are well defined, if the objective is something that everybody can get behind, then investing the time into getting a better result is fairly evident and obvious, and you can get to those kinds of end results and outcomes that you're looking for. Earlier you were asking, why is architecture important? And this whole conversation about how do I get mobile and how do I layer security and how do I provide access to applications with a unified interface? It is all about the architecture. I mean, cloud is transforming the way government has done IT architecture. 25, 30 years ago, systems were stovepiped. You had mainframe technology with hardwired devices into that mainframe for specific application. And if you wanted to bring a different kind of device, you had to bring a different kind of architecture and hardwire into it. The beauty of RightPath and what NNSA is doing with cloud infrastructure today is they're taking it more on IT as a service is the back end. Providing access to a consumer community, regardless device, regardless of network, is the objective. We like to use the analogy of DirecTV. DirecTV doesn't care what kind of device you have at home to watch their programming. What do they care about? They care about, they know what you're watching, so they can charge you for it. Their whole interface is self-provisioning. You pick the package that you want based on the channels, pay-per-view, you pick that, and you get charged for it. They put a little device out there, and it's common across all of the viewers. If we take that concept to what we're trying to do with IT, the idea that iOS is not government-friendly, it's absolutely a consumer solution. I would argue that iOS 7 has some enhancements that helps that. But at the end of the day, why should we care? If the architecture says the data stays in my purview, in my data center, in my cloud infrastructure, and I don't really care what the device is, and for the rare occasion where I have to put data on that remote device so that I can operate when there's not a connection available, technology says today you can isolate that and you can secure that on the device, even an iOS device, to government security standards. That's the technology component. How do we build that into the architecture? How do we build that into the business processes and the overall culture of how I access that and make it truly a consumable rather than a stovepipe solution of 25, 30 years ago?
Rick, did you want to add anything?
No, I think he's exactly right. I think what we look at also is standardization throughout, and to open the information up and be totally transparent. We use it every day in our lives. I know I go to Best Buy and I want to see if I'm getting the best price, and I scan the barcode, and boom, here's one 2 miles down the road. It's cheaper. Guess where I'm going to go? The merchants hate it, but it's transparency of information. That's what we're trying to do in government. The architecture is the same way. What we're trying to do at DOE is set a standard to allow that transformation of information to go back and forth regardless of where you're at, where you can make the best decision, or you know your next door neighbor has a snow blower that you can use when you got 18 inches of snow and you don't have to go out and buy one. So that's the kind of issues that we like to work with.
They apparently have a snowblower in the kitchen too. So,
Yeah.
questions out there? I want to talk about mobility, but no. I'll move on to mobility. Oh yes, hi. Hold on, let me get over there and not fall on my face. Wow, look at Pete's socks. Those are awesome. Hi.
Hi, thanks. Can you see me through the transparent pole here? Now you know what my view looks like. Anyway, I really like the end user discussion and bringing the end users into play. And oh, by the way, I'm Scott Paisley from Julex and soon to be Cisco. But the reason I like this in-piece discussion is because I kind of go, you've heard the adage, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Heard it earlier. I say if you make the horse thirsty, he'll find the water by himself. So one of the things I really like here is hearing about is that, you know, the transparency and pieces associated with that really is, it really boils down to convenience, which kind of flows right into the security piece. You know, doing the right thing may not be the convenient thing. I think most end users tend to pick the convenient thing. And then the other piece is motivation. And so my question really boils around, you know, I've got 3 kids at home, one's in high school, and they're using things like sharing Google documents and things like that. Why? It's easy, it's convenient, it's what they know, it's what the universities are using. So when we move out into the other areas, how do we make it convenient so that, you know, the horses come to our watering hole, not another hole that's more convenient to kind of get the right thing?
Build a better mousetrap kind of idea.
Yeah, I want my amusement park to be better, right?
We have this young man staying with us who has an internship in town, and they text everything. And I even hear people texting for work situations now, which just shocks me. How do you do that? How do you build that better? You have to build a better product or else they will find the other way around.
Well, I think the answer, the answer is blowing in the wind. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's out there. So one of the things that we clearly recognize is that we can go the traditional route and we could build a solution. I could spend all day in user center design meetings. I could talk to my customers, and I can build a stack of waterfall requirements a mile high and go to production and build something that's going to be extremely expensive. But my speed to market, because the only thing constant in the universe is the speed of government, is the fact that I will miss the market opportunity. My customer will have moved on and they won't care about me, and what I will have built will have been irrelevant, and at the end of the day I'll tell my dad I've wasted his money. So leveraging Agile, our goal is to understand the customer. Our goal is to get to market in time for the customer to use the product that's ideally suited for them. And so if we've got a younger crew of people coming into government, we know that's happening, they're coming in, they're all working in a social environment, we want that business social network. We want you to socialize with your peers. We want you to socialize with your mentors. We want you to do your job the way you live your life. Maybe not everybody, but at the end of the day, that's how we want this done. We want you to be able to be comfortable in your job, be happy in your job, because why are you doing this job is important to us. When we talk to people about and bring them into ERE, one of the fundamental questions I ask them is, why are you doing this? I don't do this for the money. I don't do it for the benefits. I do it because my wife says I can, and I love doing it. This is why I do this. I come to work every day with a totally clear conscience because the goal is to move the mission of DOE and the nation forward. This is why I do this. Do you want to do this? Do you want to come in and PM this project and build something extraordinary for the end use customer, taxpayers, government, whoever that is? Do you really have that belly passion? Do you want to bring in business social network, solve the problem of mobile information so I can consume it where and when I want it and need it to do my job? If I'm in the field and technology deployment or technology manager, and I'm looking at a wind farm and I need to send data in on the project, I should be able to do that from whatever device I have handy into an enterprise that is both secure and adaptable to the receiving device, whatever that is, wherever it is. You know, these guys make that possible. I'm the dreamer, the propeller head that comes up with the application that puts it in the hand, and these guys give me systems and solutions that maybe in government I don't want to take the time to build, but they already have. They've solved it. Groups like Salesforce and SharePoint and anybody, they've solved these problems. They're there. How government adapts them for our use, where it's right and appropriate, that's the win.
Yeah, so I'll add to that in that, you know, I think you're absolutely right from the standpoint of, you know, we as government employees, we exist to serve our community, our users, to enable the mission. That's why we're here, right? Was we partner with industry and government, industry and government work together to enable the mission, right? The question is, how are we enabling that mission to best meet the needs of our users in an ever-evolving, changing landscape, right? So you brought up social. Social, I completely agree, because the way in which we're communicating and collaborating is fundamentally changing. I'll give you an example. Case in point, email. Say you get about 100 emails a day, right? Let's just say, okay, so exactly. So let's say it's 1,000 emails a day, all right? How much of that email is actually actionable that you get? Maybe 10%, maybe 20%? And how much time do you spend going through all of that email on your smartphones that are sitting in front of each and every one of you? 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day. You're sitting there 9, 10 o'clock at night. What's the first thing you reach for when you wake up? Your phone, right? What's the first thing you open? It might be your email, or it might be your social network, right? Wherein you're seeing what's going on in your personal lives, right? So as we change the vehicle in which we communicate and collaborate, in that social context and that paradigm, we have to bring that UX, that user experience, to our work lives. And in our context, that's One Voice, a social network that we purchased that's running within your cloud with our information, but looks just like Facebook, just like what you click on a day-to-day basis. Changing the way we communicate and collaborate, leveraging capabilities that we can purchase, procure, with a UX that looks just like you use at home.
Do you guys have anything you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
I think a gentleman in the earlier panel said that next 15 years, there's going to be a big retirement within the federal government. I think you're going to see a retirement of email as well. If you look at the generations that are coming into the workforce today, they use social networks, they use Safari, they rarely use email. And I think what we're going to find ourselves in is a situation where if you take the applicable technologies that are used in the commercial world today, and you actually, I hate the word big data because it's meaningless. It has zero analytics behind it. It's just a blob of data. But if you get to a point with the user base that is mobile, that you give them access to content that has analytical capabilities, and you give them instant messaging, because quite frankly, for one, I have instant messaging on my mobile. I don't do emails anymore. It's not necessary. And you give them a social platform within an organization, such as the Department of Energy. I think their productivity, their experience, their delight will go up exponentially.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I still live on email, but there is a change going on. About a year and a half ago, Citrix acquired a company called Podio, And it is a social networking collaborative capability. And that organization probably transferred more information on a daily basis than certainly I did. But they didn't have email. It was all resident in this social, collaborative, central environment, so that when I needed something, I went and found it. If it was important enough, I would get an alert that something was posted out there. But the concept of a contained email with a finite set of users on the distribution list was foreign to them. Today, they've learned to use email at Citrix, but that's just the cultural thing that we do. I like the analogy of if you lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. But if you make them thirsty, just to leverage or go back to your VA analogy, the doctor's using an easy-to-use Google Calendar out there. The calendar that VA provided in Outlook was more than adequate to do the job. It just wasn't easy to share, and you had to read the manual to figure out how to do all of that. Where we're going today, and what we're seeing with some of the initiatives here at DOE, is provide options. If Outlook's not the right calendar interface, put a different interface in front of them. Bring Google into your secured IT as a service concept. It all relates to the same calendar back end that tells the doctor where he needs to be and when. The interface is different. The sharing capacity is different. So, kind of to answer the question, the more options you can give a user community, the more horses you're going to bring to drink. And that's the beauty of cloud technologies today, is that we really can embrace multiple kinds of interfaces to that back-end IT as a service capability that we're all striving for.
Other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to talk mobility. I want to talk about how mobility changes, because it seems we're hearing this, and it's mobility, one of these things that both has a citizen face to it, but also an internal face. What does mobility mean to energy?
Well, I think you heard it talked about earlier on in that, at the end of the day, mobility, we're NNSA, at least from our context, our primary responsibility is the safety, security, and reliability of nuclear weapons. But we're very interested in mobility. So from that standpoint, mobility, as our workforce evolves, as our workforce changes, at the end of the day, we cannot be prescriptive around the device that's sitting in front of you. We have to embrace the diversity of our enterprise, embrace the fact that our workforce is changing, and implement the right capabilities and solutions to allow users to make the right decisions in terms of what technologies and applications make sense for them through a self-service vehicle. That really is the way that as we change, again, and evolve the method and paradigm in which we deliver services from an IT sole service provider to a broker, right? And we change that vehicle, right? We're embracing mobility, and we're allowing users to make the right choices, leveraging containerization, if you have to bring the device on, or data on the device, leveraging virtualization, if you can keep that information in the data center and just present back that information through whatever device you happen to have, right? And then have the right app store to where you can consume the right applications that make sense for you. It makes mobility real. That's what we're doing today in our personal lives. We have phones in front of us today. We have tablets in front of us today, right? We go and make decisions and choices about applications that make sense for us. Doing the same thing within the enterprise is really the mission as we move to IT as a service.
And mobility feels like one of these areas where we're just really at the start of this. We're like at the 2% point, and it's still changing stuff.
Well, I would use my own experience. Carrying a bag for Hayes microcomputer products 25 years ago, I had a pager. I had a bag phone. I was mobile. I had capability outside the office that my predecessor in that job didn't have. That pager went from a pager to a BlackBerry. That BlackBerry has gone to now an
Just
iPhone. But we've been mobile at some stage for quite a while. How do we take advantage today of all the options without stovepiping a system based on the device? You ask what is mobility, you read DoD's mobility policy. It's very focused on GFE smartphones. That's a narrow focus on mobility that needs to be made where we are today. But the greater focus, in Anil's perspective, is any device. Device independence really is the core objective of mobility, or as we like to call it, mobile work styles. I should not be dependent upon what's the next generation or the next gadget that comes out. We go back to that conversation about architecture. If we build it right, if the delivery center is the focus, any device that comes out. I'm going to get to that Dick Tracy watch where I can read my instant messages and stay in contact. It's device independence that really is the objective of mobility.
But Rob, all those years ago when I got my first iPhone, I remember just being blown away as to what I could do. And all of a sudden, it felt like I had everything I needed right here in my hand. And it feels like we're not quite there in government, where there's the applications that are built where people have the power, where they're wowed.
That is a challenge, and to reiterate what they're saying here on mobility is, so many people spend time when you say mobile, they think the devices that my buddy Pete Saronis is checking. It's that I have two devices, I'm checking them constantly, I'm going back and forth, I've got my tablet, I'm constantly distracted on the device, and you focus on that device. From certainly with an ER perspective, we respect the idea we got to get it to the device. But mobility for us is the ability to move the information, move that which is important to the organization of DOE and ERE particularly, to the end-use consumer. It's mobility of information, device agnostic, location agnostic. It lets me do what I want. In 1999, when I got my first flip phone, working for a security firm, doing IT security, watching all sorts of wacky stuff going on, it was an ability that my boss could call me, and thank goodness I was single, say, get on a plane, you're going with me, we have a penetration here, and off we'd go. And it was the ability to do your job at an instant's notice. And that was really cool. And we still have the same complaints we do today. How many devices do you have? And I had several. I had a pager, I had flip phones, I had all these things. Today, I have one of every tablet. And some I like and some are doorstops. And I have two phones. I have a government device and I have a personal device. I keep them separate. Anil uses containerization for his iPhone. It's phenomenal. Me, I like to keep mine separate, personal preference. It doesn't mean that I have to move the agency or the organization to everybody uses one device. I don't have to do that. Again, you can ask a consumer of that information, how do you work best? Do you want it in a tablet? Do you want it on a phone? Do you want it on a train? Do you want it in the rain? What do you want? How do you do that?
Sam, I am.
Sam, I am.
Yeah. I have a 2-year-old, and I can recite that from beginning to end. So, any other comments about that? Because we're just about out of time, and I want to get you guys to, with the last panel, we asked them to peer into their crystal balls, and what are they going to be looking at in 5 years' time? I'm going to ask you guys to do the same thing, and I'll start over here, James.
I think it goes to the heart of the whole discussion, where I think the device dependency is gone, number one. I think number two, we're hitting if you look at from, let's say 2007 to the end of last year, it was the era of compliance. We are now in the era of enablement. And I think that with the workforce changes that are occurring, virtualization of applications is going to be vitally important. If you think about infrastructure as a service and you think about cloud, I'm old enough to think about time sharing. We're going back to time sharing. And at the end of the day, I think that security is vitally important, but I think if we containerize and get to a persona level of individuals, that 5 years from now we will be in a cloud environment. The CapEx, OpEx discussions will go away, and it'll be a complete enablement of the end user experience.
So, I think just to follow on that, what is going to change as a result of that are the business processes, the way we do things. I know even within our own company, the way we run our business is sometimes so dependent on the information technology to provide us information to do that, that we're not able to do the things that we think we want to do in the business world based on the processes that IT dictates. Cloud is going to enable that transformation to where now we can start, with a hierarchy of strategy, business, technology, we can start looking at true business process re-engineering and leverage the capabilities that mobile brings to tomorrow's environment and really affect the way we do business and make some fundamental changes there.
Boy, 5 years is a long way to think in technology. 2 would be more comfortable. But at the end of the day, I think what you're really going to see is you're going to see an interesting challenge, because as we adapt the way we do business, certainly in commercial sectors or in government, we merge our two. We tend to bring ourselves together and we say, oh, we're going to go business social media to do our job. We're going to use these mediums in the social enterprise to do our jobs better, faster, cheaper, smarter, whatever. At the end of the day, the challenge you're going to have is how many social spaces are you going to have to mitigate or merge or bridge. So I'm going to have a personal social space, I'm going to have a private social space, teaching people how to work in a business social network and not say something stupid. It's going to happen. And you have to teach people how to do that. So today you have Facebook, you have Pathway, it's another new one that's out there, you've got LinkedIn, you've got all these things. As they
You
begin,
can say GovLoop, it's okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
As they begin to, we're going to define how people work in these different spaces and how you're going to deal with your different social spaces that you work in, business, personal. I think that's a challenge ahead of us. We're driving to this new paradigm archetype of how we do business in government. We accept the fact that we have to put some phrases back into government. Marketing communications needs to return to government. What's your speed to market needs to return to government. They've been absent for a long time. We need to meet the need when it's met, but we also need to understand that as we bring in new capabilities from innovative companies that are out here, we need to know what that means to us and how we're going to adapt to evolve with them. Because right now government says wonderful phrases, lean startup methodology. Great, that's wonderful. I got $10, I can go to market, I can do it fast. But I in government am not ready to accept the risk that goes with the lean startup model, because I don't have a bunch of VCs funding me. I got taxpayers that are going to get awfully angry when it falls on its butt. So lean startup model works to a point. How does government adapt to do that? How do we get those challenges? So in 5 years down the road, I see lots of challenges, but there are going to be solutions that we don't perceive yet.
Rick?
No, I agree with Rob. You know, if I mentioned 300 baud modem to my 2 daughters, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. Because they've got 60 megabyte download.
You got mail.
So, you know, the one area that I think is going to, other than just a standardization of the way we do business and exchange of information, is to use more shared services. And that is a way to lower IT costs. That's a goal of OMB, as well as our CIO, and to shared services is one way to do it. We spend $81 billion a year in IT services. And the way to do that, if you've got 10, 25 different HR systems or 25 different financial systems, then we should be looking at shared services. So we're beginning that process now. 5 years is very hard to predict. You can look 5 years behind and say, well, man, I'm surprised at all the technology that has occurred in the last 5 years. But, and I always go back to, does business drive technology or technology drive business? I think it's a little of both, but I think it's more so technology. I'd lean, if I had to vote, technology side. So I think shared service is a big one to lower the cost for the way of doing business.
Neil, bring it all home.
All right, so you know, I'll say, you know, really this is the most exciting time to be in IT since the advent of the personal computer. There is so much change going on within our industry today. And as we implement new solutions and we design new capabilities to enable our mission, right, at the end of the day, we need to focus on one thing, enabling the mission, right, and doing that in a safe and secure way. You've taught, and doing it not so much as we have a solution, but we as IT folks are problem solvers. And we're solving actual problems within our mission. And what does that problem look like? It could be a people issue. It could be a process, evolving our business processes. It could be a technology capability where we're developing and delivering new technology. As we evolve the consumption vehicle, for example, you know, looking 5 years out, moving from smartphones to smartware, things like Google Glass, where there's a whole new consumption model. We have to evolve the IT landscape to be able to embrace that new consumption model. Right? So when we look at it from that perspective, we bake security in, having the right enterprise architecture, leverage shared services so that we're not building solutions over and over again, actually employ agile solution delivery to deliver real solutions to real problems, enabling the mission, right? Delivering IT as a service, focusing on the user first. That, from a challenge perspective, is our grand challenge. And doing so in a vehicle, in a model that makes sense, helps us all win and enables our mission in a safe and secure way.
Thank you all for doing this. You know, I think we do live in such interesting times, almost too interesting. And I keep describing them as the best of times, the worst of times. And you've talked about a lot of the best of times, and we live the worst of times, right? I keep hoping that the budget stuff will cause us to stop doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, that we'll do something different, that we'll actually do shared services. But I've also been covering this stuff for a long time and know the challenges there. So there's plenty of challenges ahead. I work for an outfit called GovLoop, where we're helping you, 70,000 government people who are helping you solve these problems. Come join us there. We'll try and work them out together. I hope you'll join me in thanking Robert and James and Neil and Rick and Tom. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.